Welcome to another exciting venture of Vintage Drum Restoration Garage. How you doing? This is Bruce here, and we've got another project coming your way. It's something that's been laying on the bench for about a month or so, and I don't know if you folks are familiar with these drums. They're quite nice. So what we've got here today is a 1962 and 3 they made this drum, Ludwig Super Sensitive. These drums were quite unique. It's the no serial numbers on the badge, and this is pre red felt tone controls. That was just the black felt. And also we have the seamless spun brass shell, quite heavy drum. And check out the writing on the arm of the throw off here. It's unlike any that Ludwig ever used prior or any time after, so this was only a 2-year deal. And look at the handle, it's a cast brass handle, and you'll notice that there are plates underneath where the snare mechanism attaches to the shell, quite thick plates. Also, these parts in here are metal, which later changed. So what we had here is the beginning started out, I think in the late 20s, they called it the Ludwig Super, with this type of a throw off. This kind of a thing on both ends of the drum. And this is the throw off handle here, and you can see the Ludwig stamp there, 1924. And it's basically pretty much the same as this here. Just a little bit of an update. Because when Ludwig went out of business due to bankruptcy, he started WFL back in, I think, in the mid-30s. And all the way up to 1962, there were no super sensitive snare drums offered. So this was coming back full circle. So they had this throw off in the 30s, then they went to this one. And then in 64, they changed it again to this one. I believe they still had the metal plate back here. But look what they did to it. They changed it to this plastic part here. Save a little money, I guess. Change the handle. I believe this is the right handle for this one. I'm pretty sure it is. It might not be, but I think it is. Anyway, you get the idea. They changed a few parts. It was never the same. I believe they went to an aluminum shell after 64 too. So things quite rapidly changed. So to find one of these drums is kind of a tough deal. So when this came along, I had to get it, and I think I've had these in the past but didn't really pay much attention, but I wanted to own one of these again. And so you can see it's in need of a good polish and a complete disassembly. You'll notice there's the same stamp on the arm there on the butt side. and there's where you adjust each wire. This should actually be on the other side of the drum. Drum didn't come with these guards, but these guards, I had them in my parts collection. They just go right up underneath, and they attached underneath the rods here and go right there. So I've got two guards to make the drum complete. These are chrome over brass hoops on this drum, brass shell, and that really makes a difference in the sound. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it apart, and we'll start cleaning it up. Okay, so I've got some dents in this head, and it's not the drum, the head that's going to go on the drum, but I just thought I'd give you a little remedy for these heads that are dented. It's something I've been doing for many years. I didn't think of it, another friend of mine did, and you just run the heat gun over it and get the old heat gun out and go right over them, and look at there, they just disappear. Look at that, they're gone. Any of these little ones don't leave it on for very long. They just go right through the head. So look at that. That head is in, you know, good usable shape now. Just thought I'd show you that. So when I'm taking out these tone controls, I usually put a little oil on there to remove them, because I think that they crimp the end of these screws so they won't come out, they won't back out on you. So I always oil them up real good, and then when I'm taking them out, they come out a lot easier. This one's going to fight me, I can see that, but a little oil is going to help. Okay, so now if these tone controls are fighting you to get them off because they damage the threads halfway through on this rod, so it won't back out on the player. So what I do is I put the knob in these wooden jaws. It won't ruin the knurling on there. I'd much rather do that than see a guy put some vice grips or something on that knob out there and mess it all up. So then I just put it down there, and I use these vice grips to turn the inner, well, round nut thing here, retaining nut. Okay, so that's what I do there. Yeah, so now look, you've got your knurling. It's beautiful. There's no marks on it where someone might have taken a pair of pliers to it and turned that. I don't turn this. I turn the inner, what I'll call the retaining part. I'll turn that one. I'd rather make marks on this than this. Okay, so that's just a little deal there. Now, if you look closely, you'll see right here on this rod, this is where they put they crossed the threads there so it wouldn't back out any further. That's something they did at the factory to stop it from backing out. So you're fighting that when you're taking that out. The threads will be fine when you take them out, as long as you oil them real good. That's just a little tip there. Right, so we've got the nuts off both sides of the throw-off levers. Taking those off, I just use a small crescent wrench. And now we want to take these screws out of each side of the levers here. That'll release that from the rods here, this parallel rod here. Okay, we've got those removed, so we'll just take and pull this one side out of here, and keep an eye out here. Sometimes they put a spring in here. There's not a spring in that side. Let's take this side out and see if we've got a spring in there. I know I've dealt with a lot of... No, there's no springs in this drum. You know, someone could have had this drum apart, though, years ago, and that spring got lost. I may put a spring in there, though. It's a very small spring. It keeps that rod from making sound, you know, when you're operating it. Okay, we've removed these jaws, I call them, from the shell here. And now, if you look closely here, you see the inside. There's this plate here. This plate runs along and catches the bottom screws on these lugs. So when you remove these screws, that plate will come away. And there's that plate. The thing, I just removed one of these lugs, and these things weigh way more than the Superphonic lugs of the 60s. Look at how well they're made. They're just so much better. Just thought I'd point that out. Okay, we've got it all taken apart, and as you can see, hasn't been cleaned in years. Now we've got a few little dings in the shell. There's one right here, and I'll show you how I take those out. I put my wooden jaws in my vise there, and I'll just balance the shell on the wood there, making sure that the metal isn't hitting the shell. And I'll just take a small rawhide mallet. Just a second here, let me raise this thing for you. Alright, so I'll just lay that dent right there on the wood, and you tap it on the height of the dent. It's coming out real nice. Now we just got to get the puckers out of the edge. Now I'm just gonna use a small ball peen hammered here. Use the ball on there. I mean the peen. That's coming out pretty good there. Okay, I'll clean that up and we'll have a look at it. Hey Bruce, what do you use to clean your chrome with? Oh, I'm glad you asked. I use 4/0 steel wool. See the 4 zeros there? That's 4/0. That's the finest steel wool you can get. Grade number 4 zeros. And I use a mixture of ammonia and water. About 50-50 ammonia, 50-50 water, you know, 50 and 50. That's what I use. Have been for years and haven't really had any trouble with it. Other people use different solutions. It works for them. It's great. I'll just clean this area here. We'll have a look at it. So it's pretty flat there. Just gonna clean it up a little better there. This is not a final clean by any means. Okay, I've got that all cleaned up, and I took it over to my buffing wheels and gave it a good buffing as well, a light buffing. So I'm just going to take some regular lemon furniture polish, put it on there, give it a little protection, and clean up the shell. Now, what I was saying earlier about the history of Ludwig is that I said that they didn't make super sensitive throw-offs. Well, actually, Ludwig was owned by Kahn, I believe, in early 30s. Don't know the exact year. But they went out of business and he had to sell his name to the Kahn company. And they did continue to produce super mechanisms, but it wasn't actually under Ludwig, it was Kahn. So what I'm saying is, by the time he bought his name back in, I believe, 56 or 5, somewhere in there, he hadn't produced his own super mechanism since the 30s. So just to be clear on that, that's what I'm talking about. Now this shell has you know, quite a bit of scratches on it. Where am I? Okay, yeah, you can kind of see the scratches in this area here. There they are. Quite a bit of scratches from, you know, just being around. And so it's not going to be perfect. Nothing ever is. So just going to live with it the way it is. Still a beautiful drum, will sound wonderful. That's all I care about. I'm using a terry cloth rag here, or as my wife would say, cloth, on this, because I find that it gives it a finer polish. And that'll be kind of my final go over on this shell before I install parts. Okay, I just wanted to show you the catalog that first illustrates this snare drum that we're dealing with. This catalog number 62, and that's 1962, and we'll go down to the page. Here's this drum, and it gives all the specs of the drum and shows you the exact throw off, and talks about the sizes and what its specs are on the whole thing. They call it a dual throw off, and there's the price of it, 120 bucks. And here's all the information from this drum. So that's where I learned about these, the year of this drum. So I just thought I'd throw that in. You can get that off of the Drum Archive on Google. Just Google Drum Archives, and they've got all kinds of catalogs, and it'll show all this information.